But I think education is really, really maybe educating the elders and also educating our front line, the people that are working in operations that see these transactions go through.
As the Dean of Retail Banking, I'm really excited to share the content around the why behind what you're doing and how you can really make an impact. And I was chatting with Patty a little earlier today and was talking about how sometimes the risk management aspect of the frontline role is just under recognized. They play such a huge part as gatekeepers to the financial institution and managing these relationships and really knowing the customer, knowing the behavior that they're going to be able to recognize something out of the normal well before even any analytical tool that you're putting into place will. You just can't replace that human aspect of it. I have Patty here with me today to talk a little bit about elder abuse in the space in retail banking and how those folks may be positioned well to identify some of this stuff. So, welcome, Patty. Can you talk to me a little bit about the common vulnerabilities that make seniors a prime target for financial exploitation?
They have the money. They have the money. That's where the money is, you know. They were raised in a time where they saved. Back in the day, there was something called a pension, which, we don't see a lot of that anymore, so that they've got the money. I would say that in this day and age, as I'm, an elder now, right now, as the elders, the baby boomers are getting older and older. Unfortunately, we're probably going to see the numbers rise. But however, a lot of elders are very computer savvy. They're bright, they're younger. So it really tends to happen when the cognitive decision making. So when you start to get dementia, that's when you see, I think it happen more. But there are a lot of different scams out there now. I know there was after COVID, there was a lot of COVID scams. They were selling, masks and the cure all coming in, disinfecting your house, all these scams. So that COVID was we saw a lot of inflict. And the problem is that institutions really need to be looking at their like online activity of the elders, right? Because we're not seeing the elder come into the branch. Back in the day, you could look for physical signs of them looking, grandma used to come in, she had their lipstick on and looked all made up. And now she comes in, she looks, maybe she's over medicated, she's thin, she looks unkempt. That could be a sign, right? Because generally, when there's financial exploitation, there's also other types of abuse, physical, mental, and sexual abuse as well. So where you're not seeing the elders come in, we as financial institutions need to be looking online. We know why is grandma in Vegas and Florida and the card purchases, we need to be looking at those as institutions. Yeah, I think that generally the elders are educated. I used to go out to churches and over 65 communities, and people would be like, oh, yeah, my friend was taken advantage of by the grandson scam. Her got a call with, so a lot of them are educated, but I think it's more apt to happen as they get older and they need that assistance and they're not, remembering writing checks. But, in things that are out of the norm, grandma has never come in and requested a wire to be sent, right? So it's really important that the frontline people ask those questions. And also, if they are coming to the branch, families, 90% of elder abuse is family members. So when they come in with their grandson or their new boyfriend, if you're able to separate them and ask open-ended questions to the elders and ask questions of the boyfriend or the grandson, that can be helpful as well.
There's just this general sense of trust too when you're dealing with family, and that's what makes some of this stuff so unfortunate and so heartbreaking, really, is these are close family members and close friends that have gained the trust and just abused it.
Oh,
That's
I mean,
awful.
I could sit here all afternoon and tell you just
Yeah.
stories after stories after stories.
Now, you've said that, digital adoption by elders is actually, on the rise. And I wonder if like COVID had a hand in that, right? No one could really go out and go into the branches and stuff. So it kind of forced the shift to online banking and things like that and managing through that channel, your finances and things like that. Do you think that it did still play a role, this digital shift in fraud and vulnerability, because even since COVID, that shift was huge, right, to online usage of online banking portals and channels. But fraud was also huge during that time as well.
Yeah, we definitely saw an increase in that. And again, from the side of the institutions, if you're not seeing elders come into the branches anymore, because we know that branch traffic has gone down over the years. It's so important for us to be monitoring grandma's account, looking for those out of the norm things. I think one of the scams that we're really seeing is IT support. This actually happened to me just a few months ago. I'm on my computer, and all of a sudden this big flag came up on my screen. Call this 800 number to, you've got a virus, call us. That is huge, because most people, again, they're trusting. We need to educate them on the scams. The romance scams, that's huge too. These people are lonely, right? So they fall victim for these romance scams where they get these. There was this one woman, I was talking about this with Joe Caselli on a podcast we did. There was a woman who was in her 40s at the time, because I was around the same age as this woman that was committing fraud out on the West Coast. She had several boyfriends, older men, and her stick was that was a breast cancer survivor, and she's needed money to have reconstructed her. And she was, many gentlemen had fallen victim to that, so there's just a lot going on, just a lot of different things, and we're seeing more and more scams. It's like we always talk about fraud and how the bad guys are always one step ahead of us, and it's the same with the scams that we're seeing. But the most important thing we can do as institutions, I think, is educating. Like when I'm on hold with my bank, instead of music, talk to me about the latest scams that are going on, right? While people are on hold on the website. Again, we're all computer savvy elders. My mom is 83 and she pays her bills online with her banking website. On the website, on your homepage, let us know what the latest scams are, right? Even for us, just payment related scams, and also, things that are, we see more with elders, right? Education. But I have a really interesting story. I have a friend, his name is Paul, and he worked for the San Diego DA's office. 27 years he prosecuted nothing but elder crimes. And he's now actually he does consulting for AARP. So he shared a story at Payments last year. We spoke together, and he had a 93-year-old woman that lived across the street. And he and his wife, kept an eye on her and all those things. So she called him up and said, I need to go to the store to buy some prepaid debit cards. Will you go with me? Because I've got $18,000 in cash and I'm afraid. And so he said, let me come over to the house. So he walked over to her house right across the street and said, tell me what's going on. What do you do? Well, I got a phone call, and she's going on and on about this scam that she fell for. Here was the interesting thing that was really upsetting to me. She went to her bank, stood in line at the lobby, withdrew $18,000 in cash, and walked out of the branch. So he drove her down to her branch and asked for the manager and said, how did you let this woman withdraw $18,000 without asking her, what is this for? This is a lot of money. You've never, you've got to ask those open in the physical, the security of her walking out with someone standing behind her that saw her. So shame on that institution, right? They should have brought her into a closed door and said, what's going on? You've never come in to withdraw cash. So if it hadn't been for her asking him to escort her to Walmart to buy these prepaid cards, so that was disturbing to me. A financial institution should not have let that happen, right?
Can you discuss any specific programs or technologies that have proven effective in safeguarding senior clients?
Yeah, I can't talk about one of them too much because I'm on an advisory board with a company that is creating something. So I can't really I can touch on something called a shared contact list. So this is where you as an institution, I'm going to use Elyssa, is an older woman. She's with this finance institution. The finance institutions are setting up shared contacts. So they say, Elyssa, is there anybody now that you have that we can put on? It's her granddaughter or her next door neighbor. But now it's not as easy because number one, she might say my daughter. Well, how do you know the daughter's not committing the fraud, right? So, but it's easier said than done because you want to do background checks. So when you establish a shared contact, it could be me, her daughter, I am not even at your institution where mom is at. I'm somewhere else. But this would be where, when they see mom, grandma, making a wire transaction, they would call the daughter and say, your mom is just trying to initiate a wire to Croatia. We've never, can you, can you maybe want to call her? So, but the thing is, on this board I'm sitting on, I'm talking from a, how do you know that that person isn't the one that's going to abuse? And so then they had, this talk about having, like, one or two of these shared contacts. So maybe the brother and the sister, and maybe the sister has rights to stop a transaction. Maybe another person has just the right, different tiers of what they're allowed to be able to do. But we do a background check, right? And I was saying to them, why I actually think that maybe, if you're, depending on how robust you want to make this, doing a credit check. And they're like, why would we do a credit check? Because if I'm the grandmother, if I'm the granddaughter, and I'm potentially could be a shared contact, and my FICO score is in the toilet, and I am in the minus of my checking account, and that, desperate people do desperate things. That could be someone that could possibly take advantage of that. So the shared contact list is kind of, something that we could think about doing. But, again, how you onboard them is going to probably be a challenge, right? You want to make sure that there's, because 90% of the abusers are family members. So,
Right. And managing the resources to be able to keep up with something like that, I could see being
yeah,
somewhat of a challenge.
it is. And the board that I'm on, they're doing this. It's incredible what they're doing. It's a product that's going to be rolled out probably end of the year, and we'll probably start talking about it a little bit later on when they're closer to announcing this product. But it's a company that we all know, so it's someone that's been in this space for quite a long time. And also, I think, just monitoring. And I think that, I don't mean to say it doesn't happen with the bigger banks, but knowing your customer, knowing that this is not a normal pattern for them, right? That should raise a flag. And how we do that, there's all kinds of software. There's software out there that will help you monitor those kind of things for elders specifically. So there's tools out there. But I think education is really, maybe educating the elders, and also educating our front line, the people that are working in operations that see these transactions go through.
That's what I was going to just mention. You have the tools in place, but there's still that, how do you know? And maybe the education aspect, not just like you mentioned to customers and clients, but the staff having the expertise that know what to look for in a given scenario. So I was going to say, what ongoing step should a financial institution take to continuously improve protection for seniors? But it sounds like awareness and education and communication out to those communities and customers and members makes
Yeah,
the difference.
I always, when I talked about, I always would say bit. The abusers, it's called BIT. They befriend, they isolate, and then they take advantage. So I'm going to use an example. When I was living in San Francisco, there was an older lady that lived across the street from me. She was actually my mom's age. Her son lived very far away. She had there was really nobody in her life. And I would always go over there and help her with her koi pond, and I changed the batteries in her smoke detectors, and she just adored me. She trusted me. It would have been so easy for me to take advantage of that, right? There was a woman in Hawaii who had across the street neighbors, a married couple that befriended her, and they're patient. They'll take a while, and then what they start doing is they might change the phone number. They might be answering the call for her. She's sleeping. She's in the bathroom. She doesn't want to talk to you. And then they tell the grandma, nobody, you have nobody but me. So that's the isolation they do. And, it's just sad. This woman in Hawaii was befriended by the couple across the street, talked her into signing her house over to her, sold it underneath, So you just don't know who it could. It's anybody that can befriend a new lover, a neighbor, family. So it's really, really sad. Yeah, it's sad. And like we say, the stats prove that as we baby boomers get older, there's going to be more elderly people, right, than ever, and probably we're going to see a lot more of it.
So we've heard a lot about how these things happen. Do you have any success stories that you know of where the intervention from a financial institution prevented significant exploitation of a senior.
Yeah, I mean, I had a handful of them, but the one with the DA there, that was wonderful what he did. And then there was a financial institution in the Bay Area that monitored transactions. So grandma was living in I'll say, San Francisco. They were seeing card transactions in Reno and Vegas, and they're like, we know that this woman isn't traveling to these places. So they kind of went through and they monitored. They got law enforcement involved on APS, and they ended up, because of their due diligence, catching this person that was abusing this elder, and the dollars that these elders are losing. And then when they become where they don't have their independence anymore, then they have to go into assisted living or living with family members now that they've lost their home and their life savings. So it's really, really, really sad. It's not a
It
real
is
fun
really sad,
topic.
and I'm thinking, it's all about education, awareness, and letting them know what to look for and to be wary and not to trust, but always make sure you have that on the back burner that this is possible, this has happened before. And while the majority you're saying happens often by really close friends or family, I would think some families could be in a good position if they know what's going on to aid in combating this type of
Yeah. But
exploitation
it's
of their
difficult
loved
because I'll
ones.
tell you, when it is, let's say it's the grandson. So grandma comes in with the grandson and she wants to take out $10,000 because she's going to buy him a car, right? And you might separate them or say, well, this, and family can be difficult because, you know, I'm Miss Teller here. It's none of your business. It's my money. And if I want to give it to my grandson, it's none of your business. And I've had a handful of members that have said, we need to close your account because they knew fraud was going on and they couldn't in good faith. Actually, they tried to talk to them. This is why it's good to have that shared contact list. This is what your mom's been doing. Can you talk to her, right? There was a man that had a girlfriend and he was giving her money and the kids were telling dad, this woman doesn't really love you. And he just adamantly refused. And these were people that worked in institutions that were educated on elder abuse, and they could not talk the dad into saying, so sometimes you're in a really difficult position as an institution because you know what's going on, and they get very angry with you. And I say, grandma, you've had your account with us for 47 years. You trusted us with your life savings, and we are very concerned on what's going on, and sitting them down and educating them about all these scams, and so it's tough. It's
It
a
is tough.
constant.
And being the voice of reason when the truth is extremely painful
Mhm.
for a lot of these people, it's just something they don't want to hear. And, you know, it's almost like a
Yeah.
customer service being on the front line. It really is, right?
Yeah.
And they are some of the most caring people, but they get some of the worst attitudes and the worst
Yep.
responses and things like that. So I
Mhm.
can see exactly where that can go wrong. But
And
trusting your gut and
yeah,
protecting them is also
yeah.
protecting the
And,
institution.
and the
So
institution doesn't have to prove they don't have to be Stabler and Benson, right? They just have to have a concern, and they would call APS. It takes APS generally 1 to 2 days to go out and actually visit grandma at her home, talk to her. But we always tell institutions, and if you're seeing these folks come in into the branches, and maybe they are starting to do that now, where COVID's kind of a little bit quiet. If you see something untoward, if they look like they're in danger, I would call, you know, law enforcement because if they look like they're really being abused or they don't look well, we don't want to have to wait a day or two for APS to go out. There was a gentleman who was a dependent adult. He was in his early 20s and he owned a home in San Francisco, which, is extremely expensive. His parents were deceased and he lived there with his caregiver. And the caregiver had the young man living in the basement. He was living in the house. He was obviously, taking all his SSI benefits. He wasn't giving him the medicine he needed. I mean, the abuse was just, so in that situation, when something like that is going on, you'd want to call 911, and get some folks out. Yeah, it's not a fun topic to talk about, really,
no,
but
it's
it's
really
important.
sad.
It's so important. It's so important because we all have mothers and fathers and grandparents. So we all need to be doing the right thing, because this could be your mom or dad or aunt, right? So we all need to do what we can to protect our elders.
So Patty, you're really, really passionate in this space, and can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got here?
Well, I actually became passionate about elders when I was a candy striper. When we actually wore candy striper pinafore, pink and white, right? I worked in a rehabilitation place in Woburn, Massachusetts for many years. I was a young girl. Then, when I was old enough to become a CNA, I was a CNA through even working at real jobs. I always volunteered as a CNA for years and years and years, always worked with elders. When I worked for the Regional Payment Association out in San Francisco, they had helped and start up a nonprofit called EFPN, Elder Financial Protection Network. And Jennifer Duane, who now works with CFPB, ran this nonprofit. And we would go out, her and I would go out to over 60 communities, churches, talk to these folks about, how to protect themselves. And this is back in 2004, 2005. So I've been really involved since then with helping to educate FIs on what they need to be doing to protect their elders. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Patty, for hopping on and talking, sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge on the topic, as it is a really sad topic, but getting it out there and telling everybody what exists and what to look for and advocating for prevention is incredible. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. I hope to see you ladies again soon.
Thanks.